So I just recently went to an event hosted by Nintendo, very 3DS centric, right after their Nintendo Direct announcement where new games were announced, in particular the new Legend of Zelda game for the 3DS. Got to sit down, got the dog and pony show about how well they're doing with the 3DS, and then I had the opportunity to play some games. I think the one that's on everybody's mind, as it was mine this morning when it was announced at the Nintendo Direct, is a Legend of Zelda game for the 3DS that is a successor, if not a sequel with no name, to the much-loved, and deservedly so, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. More surprisingly, it was there for us to play. We've had a lot of situations where Nintendo makes some pretty astonishing announcements, say like the Wind Waker remake, and doesn't really give us a sense that the game is anywhere in any phase of development. So it was really cool to be able to have that there. It was a fairly sizable chunk that you could play through. And the first thing that was immediately noticeable is how fast the game was. I found myself moving through the level at a much greater rate than I normally would in a traditional Zelda game. And to be fair, I have not been a big fan of any of the handheld Zelda games. I think that they hew too closely to the traditional style of a console Zelda game. And the way I tend to interact with handheld games is a shorter burst of gameplay. And I found it to be a little bit tough to get to anything interesting because you're going through all the kind of traditional kind of motions that I expect when I've set aside 6 hours to sit on my couch and play it on my television. So it was nice to see that, and it added a lot of challenge. I don't want to say it was like big and twitchy, but there were a lot of elements that were very platformer relevant. There's no jumping, but you had to react quickly. You're on moving platforms, there were obstacles, and I found it very, very satisfying. The 3D in it is interesting. The way it was presented in this short chunk of gameplay really was more a sense of drama, but it is based upon how they define Link to the Past over at Nintendo. That game kind of took your maps of The Legend of Zelda and really gave it a sense of verticality, which was quite impressive if you consider what the Super Nintendo system could actually do. They're playing with that sense of verticality now with the 3D, so there's this sense of depth as you're moving up through a level. You could take a hammer, bang it on a bouncy thing, step on it, it would pop you up. And I must say, it was an effective technique that was not overwhelming. I'm not a huge fan sometimes of the 3D, but I liked it. We did have to turn off the 3D when we're doing some over-the-shoulder shots, and it worked just as well, obviously, in the 2D without that depth of field, but it did lose a sense of that drama. The new gameplay hook in this game, and I don't know why, they didn't explain it both at the event or inside of the game, Link can turn into a drawing, a 2D drawing that integrates into the side of walls, and that's a way to have a new form of traversal that once again added to that kind of fast-paced gameplay. You would need to do that to get on the side of a moving block. The block would move. You have to pop off to get on a floating platform. It's aesthetically really, really cool, and I like the fact that it is playing on, well, it's supposed to be this new 3D console, and suddenly Link becomes about as 2D as you could possibly be. There's something very clever there, very satisfying. I gotta say, I'm excited for it. The other game I made sure I could spend some time with was a new Mario and Luigi game, Dream Team. I've always been a fan of this series because of its absurd irreverence, and really, for a story-based game, to have something as silly as that, and to actually have a story-based game that is wrapped around Mario and Luigi, I think that franchise has always resonated with me. This one, it's really silly. They go to a land of pillow people, spelled differently than you or I would spell pillow, and people are asleep. There were some really clever gameplay moments where Luigi takes a nap, and then Mario goes into a dream world, which is actually more of a 2D platformer world. Luigi is still there with him, but ever so often, the actual Luigi, while he's sleeping, you have to move his nose, and then you have to stretch his mustache, and that affects the world that you're in. Yeah, trying to explain this probably makes it sound really, really stupid, but it was quite enjoyable, and it really opens up that sense of real-time action happening inside of what is ostensibly a turn-based RPG. There's even more of those real-time elements when you're in the combat scenarios. One of them is turning into a Katamari Damacy type Luigi who picks up other Luigis in a ball as you're tilting the 3DS, and the more you pick up, the more powerful your attack is. It once again had a real nice sense of invention and freshness without abandoning kind of the core elements that has always made that franchise work. And I think actually when you compare that with Zelda and some of the other games that were on display there, that Nintendo on one level is playing it safe, but they're doing all the right things by serving up the kind of content that any owner of a Nintendo system would want to see. So a lot of you have known for me being a little bit hard on Nintendo. I'll reiterate it again. I'm hard on them because I love them and I want to see them do well, and some of their really bad missteps they've done in the past year have just kind of driven me a little crazy. This looks like a safe thing to do. The 3DS is selling very, very well. I think to focus very heavily on a lot of good content that also includes Animal Crossing, that also includes Donkey Kong Country. Those are good moves. They're capitalizing on what is successful. This is an odd indicator that they're finally doing things completely right with the 3DS after its fairly miserable launch with a horrible launch lineup 2 years ago. Perhaps this is a new strategy they might be adopting with the Wii U, that once the price on that falls, they're going to have even more content available, making it look more attractive as a second console. But this is probably the best foot forward I've seen Nintendo make in quite some time, and I walked away from it enthusiastic to play their games. All right, do you want to know more about what happened with all the Zelda and the excitement and the hubbity-bub? I got to sit down with someone who I've interviewed for well over a decade, Bill Trinan of Nintendo. We have a long talk both about the company and the games that they announced at the event. I encourage you to go check it out. There's some very enlightening things to be found there.